Michael Jordan finds a letter he wrote to his dad and realizes he never sent it. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's rise to basketball greatness began in the quiet streets of Wilmington, North Carolina, where his family lived modestly but with deep values. Born in 1963, Michael was the fourth of 5 children. His parents, James and Dolores, provided a solid foundation of discipline, work ethic, and love. It wasn't a life of luxury, but the Jordans instilled in their children the belief that success came through hard work, respect, and determination. Michael's competitive nature was clear from a young age, and he quickly developed a deep love for basketball, even though his athletic talents were not immediately obvious. Growing up, Michael faced many challenges, but none more notable than his early struggles in school sports. As a sophomore at Laney High School, he was cut from the varsity basketball team. At the time, it was a blow to his self-esteem, but it fueled something much greater inside him. Instead of giving up, Jordan poured himself into his game. He spent hours practicing, refining his skills, and pushing himself beyond what anyone, including his coaches, thought possible. His competitiveness, which would later define his career, was already taking shape. He was determined to prove everyone wrong. That moment of rejection became one of the most important turning points in Jordan's life. The sting of being cut from the team made him more focused and more determined to not only make the varsity squad but to become the best player the school had ever seen. The next year, he made the team, and soon, Jordan's name was being talked about across the state of North Carolina. His ability to score and his intense work ethic set him apart. By the time he was a senior, he was leading his team to victories and gaining attention from college scouts. Jordan's high school success was just the beginning. The attention he received from scouts led him to the University of North Carolina, where he would continue his basketball journey under the tutelage of legendary coach Dean Smith. At UNC, Jordan's skills blossomed even further. His time at the university became a crucible for his development into a future NBA star. He immediately made an impact, winning ACC Rookie of the Year and playing alongside other future stars. In his freshman year, he became a key player for the Tar Heels and was integral to their success. But it was his clutch performance in the 1982 NCAA championship game that really put him on the national map. With less than a minute left, Jordan hit a jumper that gave UNC the lead and eventually helped them secure the title. That moment marked the first of many defining moments in his career. As his college career progressed, Jordan grew not only in talent but also in confidence. He had the rare combination of speed, strength, and basketball IQ that made him a standout on both ends of the floor. Jordan's rise to the top wasn't just about natural ability, it was about his relentless work ethic and his willingness to push through physical and mental limits. He wanted to be great, and he wasn't going to let anyone or anything stop him from reaching that goal. By the time Jordan decided to leave college and enter the 1984 NBA draft, he had already proven himself to be one of the most exciting young talents in basketball. But there were doubts. Some questioned his ability to translate his success in college to the professional level. Could he be the player the NBA needed? The Chicago Bulls, with the 3rd overall pick in the draft, made the decision that would change the course of their franchise forever. They selected Michael Jordan, a decision that would make them relevant on the global stage. Jordan's entry into the NBA was a whirlwind. The hype around his arrival was immense, and the expectations placed on him were nearly impossible to meet. But Jordan didn't feel the weight of the expectations, he embraced them. His first season was one of immediate success. He averaged over 28 points per game, made the All-Star team, and quickly became the face of the Bulls. Yet, despite his individual accolades, the team as a whole struggled to find success. The Bulls were still a work in progress, and Jordan's immediate challenge was not just to be the best player on the court, but to help his team become contenders. Jordan's hunger for success wasn't just about personal achievement, it was about leading his team to the top. He knew that being great on his own wasn't enough. He wanted to win championships, and that required bringing his teammates along with him. His relationship with his teammates, especially Scottie Pippen, grew over time, and together they began to form the core of something special. But the road to the top was not without obstacles. The NBA was filled with talented teams, and Jordan quickly realized that individual brilliance alone wouldn't get the Bulls past the competition. Despite his individual success, Jordan found himself falling short in the playoffs. In 1986, his Bulls lost to the Boston Celtics in the first round. The Celtics were an elite team, and Jordan, despite his incredible performance, couldn't get the Bulls past them. This loss, however, didn't discourage him. Instead, it motivated him to work harder, to refine his skills, and to push his teammates to improve. Jordan wasn't satisfied with just being good, he wanted to be the best, and he wanted his team to be the best. The 1986-87 season would become a turning point for the Bulls, and for Jordan's legacy. His scoring average climbed to an astronomical 37 points per game, and he began to show the full range of his abilities: scoring, passing, defending, and leading. However, as the Bulls continued to struggle in the playoffs, it became clear that there was a deeper issue at play. Jordan was still carrying the team almost entirely on his back. While his performances were legendary, his success didn't translate into championships, and that became the next hurdle he would have to overcome. He had the talent, but his teammates didn't yet have the supporting skills to win at the highest level. It became evident that Jordan's team needed more. He needed a strong supporting cast, a solid strategy, and a coach who could bring everything together. That support came in 1989 when the Bulls hired Phil Jackson. Jackson's arrival marked a major shift in the franchise's fortunes. He wasn't just a coach, he was a visionary, introducing the triangle offense that would become the key to the Bulls' future success. With Jackson's leadership and the addition of key pieces like Scottie Pippen, the Bulls were finally ready to challenge the NBA's elite. Jordan had already shown he could carry a team to greatness, but under Jackson's system, he would finally have the tools to turn his individual brilliance into a collective force. The seeds of greatness had been planted, and now, it was time to see them grow into something special. Jordan was ready for his next challenge, winning championships. The road to that first title would be paved with trials, tribulations, and a fierce will to be the best. And it all started with a simple, yet powerful, realization: Jordan wasn't just playing for himself anymore. He was playing for something bigger. In the 1989-90 season, Michael Jordan was at the peak of his individual power. He had already established himself as the league's most dominant force, but individual brilliance was no longer enough. The Chicago Bulls had been through years of frustration, with Jordan carrying them deep into the playoffs but falling short each time. Despite leading the league in scoring year after year, despite being named an All-Star, the elusive NBA championship remained out of reach. For all of Jordan's greatness, the Bulls lacked the necessary team dynamic and coaching that could turn that individual brilliance into postseason success. But that was about to change. The arrival of Phil Jackson as head coach was the turning point that Jordan had been waiting for. Jackson was not just a coach, he was a philosopher, and his approach to the game was unlike anything Jordan had experienced. Jackson believed in balance, teamwork, and a collective effort rather than the individual dominance that had defined Jordan's style. The most significant shift was his introduction of the triangle offense, a system that emphasized ball movement, spacing, and creating opportunities for everyone, not just the star player. At first, Jordan was skeptical. He was used to handling the ball and creating plays on his own. The idea of sharing control of the offense was a foreign concept to him. But Jackson's calm demeanor and clear vision began to win Jordan over, and over time, Jordan saw that the triangle offense allowed him to not only be more efficient but also to elevate the players around him. For the first time, Jordan didn't have to do everything himself. The offense allowed him to focus on his scoring and leadership while also utilizing the talents of his teammates. Scottie Pippen, already an exceptional all-around player, became Jordan's perfect complement. The two formed a dynamic partnership that would go on to define the next decade of basketball. Pippen's defense and playmaking ability balanced Jordan's scoring, and together they began to create something special. However, the team still had much to prove. The road to greatness would not be smooth, and the competition was fierce. In the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced off against the Detroit Pistons, the team that had denied them a trip to the NBA Finals in the previous years. The Pistons, led by Isaiah Thomas and their bad boys defense, were the epitome of physical, aggressive basketball. They played with an edge, using their size and physicality to wear down their opponents, especially Jordan. The Bulls had lost to the Pistons in heartbreaking series in 1988 and 1989, and the frustration had reached a boiling point. Jordan's remarkable individual performances, averaging 35 points a game, hadn't been enough to get past the Pistons' punishing defense. The challenge was now clear. To beat the Pistons, Jordan needed to be tougher, and the team needed to be more than just Jordan. In 1990, the series against the Pistons once again pushed the Bulls to the brink. The Pistons were a seasoned and gritty team, and they seemed to have Jordan's number. Their physical style was wearing him down, but it was also forcing him to evolve. The more he faced this challenge, the more he understood that the solution was not simply overpowering the Pistons with individual skill. He needed to adjust his game, trust his teammates, and play within a team structure. It was Jordan's mental toughness, however, that allowed him to push through. Game 7 of the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals was a defining moment for Jordan and the Bulls. It was an emotionally charged game, with everything on the line. Jordan's frustration boiled over as the Pistons again employed their physical style of defense, but Jordan, now more than ever, relied on the lessons he had learned under Jackson's triangle offense. He played within the system, allowed his teammates to contribute, and found ways to attack the Pistons' defense with more patience and precision. The Bulls eventually lost the series, but the transformation that began in that moment was undeniable. Jordan had taken the first step in evolving from a solo star to the leader of a true championship contender. This loss to the Pistons would serve as the fire he needed to push his team even harder in the years to come. That summer, Jordan and the Bulls regrouped. Jackson's influence continued to take hold. He encouraged Jordan to embrace his teammates more fully and to focus on his leadership as much as his scoring. The Bulls were beginning to take shape, with Jordan becoming less of a one-man army and more of the leader of a team that understood the importance of the collective effort. The team's mentality began to shift from one of individual excellence to team success. Pippen was becoming a superstar in his own right, and other key players like Horace Grant and John Paxson were emerging as reliable contributors. The 1990-91 season was the breakthrough year. The Bulls, now operating under the full guidance of Jackson's philosophy, dominated the regular season, with Jordan leading the charge. He had learned to trust his teammates, and the triangle offense was beginning to click. The team's defense improved as well, thanks to the efforts of Pippen and Grant, who became defensive stalwarts. The Bulls were no longer just a team that relied on Jordan's scoring, they were a cohesive unit that played together on both ends of the floor. When the playoffs arrived, the Bulls were a force to be reckoned with. They breezed through the first two rounds, sweeping the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers. But the real test came in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Bulls would face the Detroit Pistons once again. The series was filled with intensity and drama, but this time, the Bulls were ready. Jordan was at his peak, and he had the support of his teammates. The Pistons' physicality didn't intimidate the Bulls this time. Jordan, with his newfound leadership and trust in his team, led the Bulls to a decisive victory, knocking the Pistons out of the playoffs. It was more than just a victory, it was a statement. Jordan and the Bulls had finally broken through the barrier that had held them back for so long. The Bulls were headed to the NBA Finals for the first time in Jordan's career. In the 1991 NBA Finals, the Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. The Lakers, still a formidable team, were the reigning champions, but the Bulls were hungry, and Jordan was determined to prove that the years of frustration had been worth it. The finals were a showdown between the old guard and the new. Magic Johnson, a five-time champion, was the face of the Lakers, while Jordan was the young star ready to claim his place as the best in the game. The series was closely contested, but Jordan was simply unstoppable. He averaged over 30 points a game and led the Bulls to a 4-1 series victory. The Bulls' first NBA championship was finally within their grasp. When Jordan held the NBA Finals trophy for the first time, it wasn't just a personal achievement, it was the culmination of years of hard work, growth, and overcoming obstacles. Jordan had proven that he was not just an individual talent but the leader of a championship team. It was a moment of triumph for him, but also for the entire Bulls organization. For the first time, they had achieved what they had set out to do, win it all. Jordan's first championship was a testament to his transformation, from a solitary superstar to a leader capable of guiding his team to victory. It was a victory that would mark the beginning of a dynasty. The Bulls' journey to that point had been long, filled with struggles, but it was clear now that they were no longer just a team with a great player. They were a team on a mission, and Michael Jordan was leading the charge. The future of the NBA had just changed forever. The 1991-92 season was a turning point for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. They had finally won the ultimate prize, but the challenge now was to prove that their first championship was not a fluke. Jordan, fresh off his first NBA title, had something to prove. The pressure to repeat was immense, but so was his desire to solidify his legacy. He had become a champion, but now he had to show that he could be the leader of a dynasty. The Bulls entered the season with a newfound confidence. They were no longer underdogs fighting their way to the top, they were the defending champions. Jordan, now fully integrated into the team's system under coach Phil Jackson, was more comfortable in his leadership role. His partnership with Scottie Pippen had grown even stronger, and together they formed one of the most formidable duos in basketball history. Pippen's all-around game was the perfect complement to Jordan's scoring ability, and their chemistry on both ends of the floor was unmatched. In addition to Pippen, the Bulls had developed a balanced supporting cast. Players like Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong, and John Paxson were ready to step up and contribute in key moments. Jordan had always been the focal point, but this time, the team was truly working as a cohesive unit. They were no longer a team built solely around his brilliance, they were a team that could thrive even when he wasn't dominating the ball. The 1991-92 season was one of the best in NBA history. The Bulls finished with a 67-15 record, the best in the league. They were dominant in every phase of the game, scoring, defense, and passing. Jordan continued to play at an MVP level, leading the league in scoring and earning a spot on the All-NBA first team. But what made the season even more impressive was the way the Bulls handled adversity. They were no longer just a team that could win when things went well, they were a team that could face challenges and still find a way to come out on top. The Bulls entered the playoffs with high expectations, and they quickly lived up to them. They swept their first two opponents, the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks, to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. It was clear that they were a force to be reckoned with, but their next challenge would come in the form of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers were no slouches, and they posed a serious threat to the Bulls' title defense. The Eastern Conference Finals against Cleveland would be one of the most intense series in NBA history. The Cavaliers had a young, talented team led by Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, and a rising star in the form of a young forward named Shawn Kemp. However, the Bulls were confident that they could repeat the success they had against the Knicks and Heat, and they had Jordan on their side. Jordan's playoff performances were always something special, and in Game 5 of the series, he put on a performance for the ages. In one of the most iconic moments of his career, Jordan scored 44 points and grabbed 8 rebounds in a crucial Game 5 win over the Cavaliers. But the real story of the game came in the final seconds, when Jordan made a clutch shot over Craig Ello to win the game and give the Bulls a 3-2 series lead. It was a moment that defined Jordan's ability to take over in clutch situations and solidified his reputation as one of the most fearless players in NBA history. With the victory in Game 5, the Bulls advanced to the NBA Finals for the second consecutive year. Their opponents were the Portland Trail Blazers, a team loaded with talent, including future Hall of Famers Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter. The Blazers had one of the best offenses in the league and were considered by many to be the team to beat in the West. But the Bulls were not intimidated. They were confident in their ability to repeat as champions, and they knew that Jordan was at his best when the stakes were highest. The NBA Finals between the Bulls and the Blazers quickly became one of the most talked about matchups in NBA history. The series was filled with drama, and it was clear that both teams were playing at an elite level. But what separated the Bulls from the Blazers was the presence of Michael Jordan. Jordan took over the finals from the very start, making a statement with his aggressive play and incredible scoring ability. In Game 1, Jordan poured in 35 points and grabbed 10 rebounds, leading the Bulls to a decisive victory. The Blazers were no match for him. However, it was Game 2 that cemented Jordan's place in basketball history. In the second half, Jordan hit 6 three-pointers, a rare feat for someone known more for his mid-range and driving ability than for his three-point shooting. His performance in Game 2 was an unforgettable demonstration of his ability to dominate on any part of the court, and it sent a clear message to the rest of the NBA. Jordan was not just a scorer. He was an all-around player capable of taking over in any situation. Throughout the series, the Bulls continued to flex their muscles, and Jordan never let up. He finished the finals with an average of 35.8 points per game and earned his second consecutive Finals MVP award. The Bulls defeated the Blazers 4-2 to win their second consecutive championship, and Jordan had proven that he was not just the best player in the league, but the best player in the world. But as much as the victory was about Jordan's individual brilliance, it was also about the growth of the team. The Bulls had matured over the course of the season, and they were now playing like a true championship contender. Jordan's leadership was evident, but so was the support of his teammates. Pippen had emerged as one of the league's best all-around players, and Grant, Paxson, and Armstrong were becoming reliable contributors. The triangle offense was now fully implemented, and the Bulls were executing it with precision. They were a complete team, and their success was not just due to Jordan's greatness, but to the collective effort of everyone involved. The 1992 championship was a statement. It was the culmination of everything Jordan had worked for, the validation of his place among the greats of the game. But it was also a recognition of his growth as a player and a leader. He was no longer just an individual scoring machine, he was the head of a dynasty. The 1992 finals showed that Jordan could win, not just through his scoring, but through his leadership and the ability to elevate his teammates. He had taken the Bulls from the brink of greatness to a place of sustained dominance. With back-to-back championships, the Bulls were now the team to beat in the NBA. Jordan had cemented his legacy as one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and he was just getting started. The 1992 season was a turning point, not just for the Bulls, but for the entire NBA. Jordan had proven that greatness was not just about scoring, but about leading, elevating, and inspiring. And with his second title in hand, he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The dynasty was just beginning, and the best was yet to come. The 1992-93 season was one of the most significant in Michael Jordan's career, not just because of the basketball, but because of what it represented: a new challenge, a new level of expectation, and a deepening sense of what it meant to be great. After winning back-to-back championships, Jordan and the Chicago Bulls were on top of the world. They had become the team to beat, and Jordan had earned his place as the undisputed leader of the NBA. But for all the accolades, the fame, and the titles, there was still something gnawing at Jordan, a deeper desire to push himself and test the limits of his abilities. Jordan had always been driven by a desire to be the best. In the early days, it had been about proving himself to everyone, including those who doubted his talent. Then, it was about winning a championship and validating his place among the NBA's greats. Now, after 2 championships, Jordan was no longer simply playing for personal glory, he was playing to build a legacy. He was determined to make the Bulls a dynasty, to create something that would stand the test of time. But that desire for greatness came with an unrelenting pressure. The 1992-93 season started with the same drive Jordan had shown in the past, but it was clear that the competition had also evolved. The NBA was filled with talented teams, especially in the West, where the Phoenix Suns, led by Charles Barkley, were emerging as a legitimate contender. In the East, the New York Knicks, led by the gritty Pat Riley, were building a reputation as a tough, defensive-minded team. The Bulls were still the team to beat, but the competition was getting stiffer. Jordan had to maintain his focus and keep his team sharp, but the strain of being at the top of his game year after year was beginning to wear on him. For Jordan, the 1992-93 season wasn't just about winning, it was about maintaining his edge. He had already reached the pinnacle of the sport, but there was always the fear that complacency could set in. The pressure was constant, every night, every game, every possession. And yet, Jordan thrived under that pressure. His commitment to excellence never wavered. He kept his teammates motivated and focused, and his individual performances continued to be nothing short of spectacular. He averaged 32.6 points per game and was named the league's MVP for the third consecutive year, a feat that had never been accomplished before. But despite his personal success, the weight of it all began to take its toll. The constant spotlight, the pressure to perform, and the grueling travel schedule were beginning to erode Jordan's sense of joy in the game. Basketball, which had once been a passion, was starting to feel like a burden. For the first time in his career, Jordan was feeling mentally and physically drained. The grind of competing at such a high level year after year was exhausting. And it wasn't just about basketball, there was something deeper, something personal, that Jordan was grappling with. In the summer of 1993, the death of his father, James Jordan Sr., devastated him. James had been more than just a father, he had been Michael's biggest supporter, his rock, and his mentor. Losing him was a blow that Jordan wasn't sure he could recover from. His grief was overwhelming, and it put everything into perspective. Basketball, which had always been Jordan's escape, suddenly felt insignificant. The desire to compete and win championships seemed less important compared to the pain of losing his father. Jordan took a break from the game, stepping away from basketball to focus on his family and to find some semblance of peace in the wake of the tragedy. It was a decision that shocked the world. Jordan, who had been on top of the NBA for years, was leaving in the prime of his career. But those who knew him understood that this wasn't a decision about basketball, it was a decision about life. Jordan needed time to heal. He needed to grieve. But as the months went by, something started to shift inside him. The desire to return to the game, to reclaim his place at the top, was something that Jordan couldn't ignore. And so, in March of 1995, Michael Jordan made his stunning return to the NBA. The announcement came in the form of a simple press release, "I'm back." Those two words sent shockwaves through the basketball world. Jordan's return was unexpected, and yet, it felt inevitable. The NBA had never been the same without him, and now, the league was about to experience the return of its most dominant player. Jordan's first few games back were filled with rust. He wasn't the same player he had been when he left the game, but the familiar spark was still there. The hunger to win, to compete, and to be the best was as strong as ever. However, Jordan's return wasn't just about him, it was about the Chicago Bulls as well. The team had changed during his absence. Scottie Pippen had blossomed into a true star, and the Bulls had become an even more balanced, cohesive unit. But Jordan's return changed everything. His leadership, his competitive drive, and his ability to elevate the play of those around him made the Bulls a formidable force once again. With Jordan back in the fold, the Bulls were once again a championship contender. The 1995 playoffs brought a fresh set of challenges. The Bulls were not the same team that had won back-to-back championships in 1991 and 1992. They were still learning to adjust to Jordan's return, and the competition was as fierce as ever. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Bulls faced the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets were a young, up-and-coming team, and they pushed the Bulls to the limit. But Jordan, despite being a bit rusty, showed why he was still the best player in the world. He was still capable of taking over a game in the blink of an eye. The Bulls survived the Hornets, but it was clear that they were not yet the dominant force they had been in the past. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced their old rivals, the Orlando Magic. The Magic, led by the dominant Shaquille O'Neal and the emerging star Penny Hardaway, were a young, athletic team that posed a serious challenge to the Bulls. The series was a hard-fought battle, but ultimately, the Magic were too much for the Bulls. In a stunning upset, the Magic eliminated the Bulls, ending their quest for a third consecutive championship. The loss to the Magic was a turning point for Jordan. It was a reminder that the NBA had changed, that the competition was fiercer, and that he couldn't just rely on his previous dominance to win. The loss forced Jordan to reflect on what he needed to do to get back to the top. It wasn't just about talent, it was about adapting to the changing landscape of the game. Jordan knew that if he wanted to reclaim his championship glory, he would have to evolve, both as a player and as a leader. The road to redemption would not be easy, but it was one that Jordan was more determined than ever to travel. The 1995 season may have ended in disappointment, but for Jordan, it was just the beginning of his next great challenge. The 1995-96 season was a momentous turning point in Michael Jordan's career. After a short-lived return in 1995 and a surprising exit in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Orlando Magic, Jordan was back with a vengeance. He wasn't just returning to the game he loved, he was returning to a team that had become even more dangerous in his absence. The Chicago Bulls were ready to take the next step, and so was Jordan. This time, his approach was different. The weight of his previous 2 championships was no longer his driving force. Instead, it was a new hunger for greatness, a desire to prove that he could rebuild, reassert, and reclaim his place as the top player in the world. The Bulls roster had transformed in Jordan's absence. Scottie Pippen had evolved into one of the best all-around players in the league, and the team had added key pieces like Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr. Pippen's rise as a star was no longer overshadowed by Jordan's dominance. Instead, the two had formed a partnership where both could thrive. Pippen's all-around game, his defense, his playmaking ability, and his leadership had come into full force. The addition of Kukoc, a versatile forward from Croatia, and Kerr, a reliable sharpshooter, gave the Bulls even more depth and flexibility. Phil Jackson's triangle offense, which had been introduced in 1989, was now running like a well-oiled machine. The Bulls' system was no longer just about Jordan, although he remained the centerpiece. It was about balancing individual brilliance with team dynamics, and Jordan was now the first to recognize this. His return to the court came with a new level of trust in his teammates, something that had started to evolve before his retirement. This trust allowed the Bulls to play a more fluid game, one in which Jordan didn't have to carry the entire burden. He was still the best player on the floor, but the Bulls had become a complete team, with every player knowing their role. By the time the regular season began, the league knew that the Bulls were back. With Jordan leading the charge, the Bulls finished the season with a staggering 72-10 record, the best regular season record in NBA history at that time. Jordan, of course, was at the center of the team's success. He averaged 30.4 points per game, and his combination of offense, defense, and leadership was unparalleled. But what set this team apart from previous Bulls squads was their ability to dominate on both ends of the floor. They were not just an offensive juggernaut, they were a defensive powerhouse as well, led by the tenacious defense of Pippen and the leadership of Jordan. The team was built on balance, and it showed. The 1996 Chicago Bulls were the epitome of dominance. Jordan's mental and physical conditioning had reached another level, and his game was more refined than ever before. The addition of strong defensive players like Ron Harper and Luke Longley also helped bolster the team's effort on that side of the ball. The team's depth and cohesion made them nearly impossible to stop. The regular season was a statement that the Bulls weren't just hoping to win, they were intent on creating a dynasty, and they would do it by any means necessary. As the playoffs began, the pressure to live up to their regular season success mounted. The Chicago Bulls had done what seemed impossible during the regular season, and now the world was watching to see if they could follow it up with an NBA championship. The first-round matchup was against the defending champion, the New York Knicks. While the Knicks were no pushovers, the Bulls were on another level. The Knicks fought hard, but the Bulls' chemistry, experience, and depth were too much. The Bulls dispatched the Knicks in 4 games, setting the tone for the postseason. Next, the Bulls faced the upstart Orlando Magic, who had knocked them out the previous year. Led by the dominant Shaquille O'Neal and a rising Penny Hardaway, the Magic posed another challenge. However, this time the Bulls were better prepared. The Magic's interior dominance was neutralized by the Bulls' defensive schemes and Jordan's relentless effort. With Jordan averaging over 30 points per game and leading the way, the Bulls quickly overwhelmed the Magic, winning the series in 4 games. It was a clear message: this was a new era of Bulls basketball. The toughest test awaited in the NBA Finals, where the Bulls would face the Seattle Supersonics. The Supersonics were a formidable opponent, with star players like Gary Payton, Shawn Kemp, and Detlef Schrempf. They had the talent, depth, and defensive ability to challenge the Bulls. Payton, known for his glove defensive prowess, was tasked with guarding Jordan. For the first time in the postseason, Jordan was faced with a defensive challenge of his own. But Jordan thrived on challenges, and his competitive spirit only heightened as the stakes grew higher. In Game 1 of the Finals, the Bulls quickly asserted their dominance. Jordan poured in 36 points, and despite Payton's defense, Jordan was unstoppable. The Supersonics tried to match up with the Bulls' strength, but the gap in overall team play was evident. The Bulls were not just a one-man show, they were a well-balanced, defensive-minded team with multiple offensive weapons. The Supersonics had no answer for the combination of Jordan's scoring and the defensive pressure the Bulls applied. In Game 2, the Supersonics managed to make things more competitive, but Jordan's ability to perform under pressure was again on full display. In a pivotal moment late in the game, he hit key shots to give the Bulls a victory. His leadership, both on and off the court, was contagious. As the series moved to Seattle, the Bulls kept up their relentless pace. Jordan led the charge in every game, scoring, defending, and doing everything needed to ensure the Bulls would come out on top. His intensity, leadership, and hunger for success kept the team focused, and the Bulls took control of the series. In Game 6, with the Bulls up 3-2, they sealed the championship in front of a national audience. Jordan put on another masterclass performance, scoring 22 points and pulling down 10 rebounds, leading the Bulls to their 4th NBA title. It was Jordan's 4th Finals MVP, solidifying his status as the greatest player of his generation. This victory was not just another title, it was the culmination of Jordan's ability to adapt and trust his teammates. He had transformed from a one-man show into a leader capable of guiding a complete team to greatness. Jordan's 4th championship was a testament to his evolution as a player. He had embraced the changes in his game and had grown as a leader. The team wasn't simply Jordan plus 4 others, it was a cohesive, unselfish unit working toward a common goal. With Phil Jackson's leadership, Scottie Pippen's versatility, and the contributions from every player on the roster, the Bulls had become an unstoppable force. The victory also solidified Jordan's legacy, proving that he could not only dominate individually but also build a dynasty through leadership and teamwork. The 1995-96 season was a triumphant return to glory for Jordan. It wasn't just about winning another championship, it was about proving to the world that he had reclaimed his place as the greatest player to ever play the game. The challenge was never about taking one more title, it was about cementing a legacy that would last far beyond the game of basketball. With that championship, Jordan and the Bulls had done something historic. The dynasty was just beginning. The 1996-97 season began with the Chicago Bulls still riding high off the 1996 championship. Michael Jordan, having regained his form after his brief retirement and his return, was more determined than ever to maintain the dominance the Bulls had established the previous year. This was not just a season to defend their title, it was about building a legacy, one that would establish them as one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. Jordan's leadership, both on and off the court, set the tone for the Bulls as they set out to prove that their success was no fluke. As the season progressed, it was clear that the Bulls had not only retained their core strength from the previous year, but had grown even more formidable. Scottie Pippen, now fully confident in his role as the league's best all-around player next to Jordan, continued to shine. Pippen's defense, playmaking, and leadership allowed the team to thrive. The supporting cast was strong as well, with players like Steve Kerr, Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc, and Luke Longley rounding out a team that was as balanced as it was dangerous. For Jordan, the 1996-97 season wasn't just about repeating the previous year's success, it was about adding to the legacy of dominance. He had already solidified himself as one of the game's greats, but the pursuit of his 6th championship and the pursuit of further cementing his place at the top of the NBA were driving forces. Jordan played with his usual intensity and focus, averaging 29.6 points per game, and he still dominated every facet of the game, both offensively and defensively. However, as the season wore on, the weight of the years began to show in Jordan's body. The physical toll of playing at the highest level for over a decade had begun to take its toll on him. Jordan, who had always been known for his conditioning and work ethic, was starting to feel the wear of multiple seasons filled with deep playoff runs and relentless competition. Still, his competitiveness and leadership never faltered. His presence on the court was a constant reminder to the team of the stakes. The goal was always the championship, and anything less would not be acceptable. The Bulls, despite Jordan's occasional struggles with fatigue, remained a dominant force throughout the season. They finished the regular season with a 69-13 record, securing the best record in the league and the top seed in the Eastern Conference. This level of dominance was unheard of at the time, and the Bulls entered the postseason as the overwhelming favorites. But, as always, they knew that the real challenge would come in the playoffs. The playoffs began with a familiar first-round matchup against the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks, while talented, were no match for the Bulls. Chicago swept them in 3 games, moving on to the next round with little resistance. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Bulls faced the upstart Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland had a promising young team, led by Shawn Kemp, but once again, the Bulls were on another level. Jordan's performances were stellar, and the team's defensive pressure was overwhelming. The Cavaliers were outmatched, and the Bulls dispatched them in 5 games. The real test, however, came in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Bulls faced the Miami Heat. The Heat, led by Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, had emerged as one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They had a balanced team and the defensive capability to challenge Chicago. Miami had a strong defensive game plan to try to slow down Jordan, but they didn't count on the overall depth of the Bulls. Game 1 of the series set the tone. Jordan was his usual dominant self, scoring 39 points, but it was the performance of his teammates that truly stood out. Pippen was playing at an elite level, and the bench players like Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr stepped up when needed. The Bulls won that first game handily, and though Miami put up a fight, they couldn't contain the Bulls' collective strength. Jordan's leadership on the court was evident, as he made sure the team stayed focused on their ultimate goal. The Bulls went on to win the series in 5 games, but it wasn't easy. The Heat gave them all they could handle, and Jordan had to dig deep to keep his team focused on the bigger picture. After the victory, Jordan spoke of his respect for the Heat but also made it clear that their championship aspirations weren't going to be hindered by any team. Miami had proven to be a worthy opponent, but Jordan and the Bulls weren't about to let anyone stand in their way. With the Eastern Conference title secured, the Bulls now faced their biggest challenge, the Utah Jazz in the 1997 NBA Finals. The Jazz, led by Karl Malone and John Stockton, were a team that had been knocking on the door of greatness for years. They had finally put it all together, and the finals promised to be a matchup between 2 of the most dominant teams in the league. Utah was known for its unselfish ball movement, and Malone's physical play inside paired well with Stockton's leadership on the floor. The stage was set for a memorable finals. Game 1 of the finals saw the Bulls come out with all guns blazing. Jordan dominated from the start, putting up 31 points in the opening game. But the Jazz weren't intimidated. They had been the top seed in the Western Conference, and they weren't about to back down just because they were facing the defending champions. The game was tight, but in the end, the Bulls proved to be the stronger team, taking a narrow win. The Jazz, led by Malone and Stockton, had more to prove. Game 2 saw the Jazz fight back, showing they were capable of keeping up with the Bulls' pace. Malone was a force in the post, and Stockton's clutch playmaking kept the Jazz in the game. But once again, Jordan's leadership and ability to rise to the occasion carried the Bulls to a victory, leaving the Jazz frustrated but determined. The series was still in its infancy, but it was clear that the Jazz would have to play their best basketball to have any chance against Chicago. By Game 3, the Bulls had settled into a rhythm. Jordan was on fire, scoring at will, and his intensity on defense forced Utah into difficult situations. The Bulls were now leading the series 2-0, and it seemed like they were well on their way to their second straight title. But Utah wasn't done. They fought back in games 3 and 4, each time adjusting their strategy and finding ways to limit Jordan's impact. However, the Bulls were a team built on resilience, and despite the Jazz's best efforts, they just couldn't match up with Chicago's depth and Jordan's relentless drive. Game 5 of the finals would go down as one of the most iconic moments in NBA history, known as the flu game. Jordan, visibly ill, played through exhaustion and dehydration, but still managed to lead the Bulls to a crucial victory. He scored 38 points, including a game-winning basket, and showed the world once again just how mentally tough he was. That game epitomized everything Jordan had built his career on, his ability to push through physical and mental limitations to win. With the Bulls up 3-2 in the series, they returned to Chicago for Game 6. The Jazz knew this could be their last chance to force a Game 7, and they came out with intensity. But Jordan was relentless. In the final moments of the game, with the Bulls leading, Jordan took over, hitting critical shots and playing lockdown defense. The Bulls secured the win, clinching their 5th championship. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 5th time, solidifying his place as the best player in the league. The 1997 Finals was another milestone in Jordan's career. He had once again led the Bulls to the top, proving that not only could he dominate individually, but he could guide a team to greatness. The 1997 championship was a testament to Jordan's unwavering commitment to winning, to his ability to perform under pressure, and to his leadership. The Bulls had proved that they were still the team to beat, and Jordan had reaffirmed his status as the best player in the game. With their 2nd consecutive title, the Bulls had completed another chapter in their dynasty. The road ahead would not be easy, but the foundation was set for their continued dominance. Jordan's legacy continued to grow, not just because of his on-court success, but because of his impact on the game itself. His refusal to settle, his leadership, and his competitiveness had become the standard for all athletes to follow. The 1997-98 season marked the end of an era for the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan. After securing back-to-back championships in 1996 and 1997, Jordan had nothing left to prove. Yet, there was still one more chapter to write, one final challenge to face. The 1998 season would be Jordan's last with the Bulls, and the stakes could not have been higher. The pressure to repeat, to defend their title for the 3rd consecutive year, weighed heavily on the team. But Jordan, the ultimate competitor, was more determined than ever to leave his mark on the game for one final time. The team had changed over the years. Key pieces like Steve Kerr, Ron Harper, and Tony Kukoc were now veterans, and the core of the team, including Jordan and Scottie Pippen, had settled into their leadership roles. The relationship between Jordan and Pippen was now cemented as one of the best in NBA history. Pippen's growth into one of the league's most versatile players was crucial to the team's success. Jordan had always trusted Pippen, and with each passing year, the dynamic between the two only became stronger. But there was also a sense of tension in the air. Coach Phil Jackson, who had guided the Bulls to 5 championships, had announced that the 1998 season would be his last with the team. There was talk of rebuilding, of new directions, and even rumors of Jordan leaving the game once more. But despite all the uncertainty, the Bulls were ready to make one last push. From the moment the 1997-98 season began, it was clear that Jordan was fully committed to the team's success. His dedication, discipline, and focus were unwavering, even as the media's scrutiny grew. Every game felt like a final test for the Bulls, each win, each loss, bringing them closer to the inevitable end of their dynasty. But despite the growing pressure, Jordan never wavered. He understood the stakes better than anyone, and he was determined to end the season with another title. The season began with high expectations, and the Bulls quickly demonstrated why they were still the team to beat. Jordan, now in his 14th season, was playing as if he were in his prime. His scoring, defense, and leadership remained unmatched. He continued to dominate on both ends of the floor, averaging 28.7 points per game and playing with the intensity that had made him a global icon. But as the season progressed, it became clear that the physical toll of his career was beginning to take its toll. Jordan played through minor injuries, but he was also keenly aware that his time was limited. The grind of 82 games, followed by another potential playoff run, was wearing on him. His body, once indestructible, was showing signs of wear. But the drive was still there. Jordan wasn't just playing for himself, he was playing for his team, for his legacy, and for the chance to cement his place as the greatest basketball player of all time. The Bulls finished the regular season with a 62-20 record, the best in the NBA. The team was firing on all cylinders, with Pippen, Kukoc, and Kerr providing invaluable support. Jackson's triangle offense was working as smoothly as ever, and the chemistry between the players was palpable. But the looming question was how long the team could maintain this level of excellence. Could they really pull off another championship with so much uncertainty surrounding the team's future? As the playoffs began, the Bulls knew that their journey would not be easy. Every team they faced would be coming for them, trying to prove that the Bulls' dynasty was over. In the first round, the Bulls faced the New Jersey Nets, a team that was still growing but had a few young stars. The Bulls handled the Nets with relative ease, sweeping them in 3 games. But it wasn't just about the victories, it was about how they got there. Jordan's leadership on the court was evident. He had an ability to take over games in the most crucial moments. In Game 2, with the Bulls trailing in the final minutes, Jordan scored 13 points in the last 5 minutes of the game to seal the win. That was vintage Jordan, performing when it mattered most. The real test came in the Eastern Conference semifinals, where the Bulls faced a tougher challenge in the form of the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets, led by the explosive guard Eddie Jones and the formidable forward Glenn Rice, were no pushovers. They were a well-balanced team, and their defense posed a legitimate threat to the Bulls. Jordan, however, was unflappable. He understood that he couldn't carry the team alone. In Game 3, he scored 45 points, but it wasn't just his scoring that helped the Bulls win. His defensive effort, leadership, and ability to make the right play at the right time were on full display. The Bulls won the series 4-1, and they were now just a few steps away from the ultimate goal. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced their biggest test yet, the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers, led by Reggie Miller, had given the Bulls trouble in previous seasons, and this year, they had an even better team. The Pacers had the size, speed, and shooting to challenge the Bulls, and with Miller playing at an elite level, they seemed poised to pull off the upset. The series was a back-and-forth battle. Games were tight, and the competition was fierce. Miller played some of the best basketball of his career, making clutch shots and leading the Pacers with confidence. But when the series was on the line, it was Jordan who once again took over. In Game 7, with the series tied 3-3, Jordan scored 45 points and grabbed 10 rebounds, pushing the Bulls to another finals appearance. The 1998 NBA Finals would be a storybook matchup. The Bulls were once again facing the Utah Jazz, who had pushed them to the limit in the previous year's finals. The Jazz, led by Karl Malone and John Stockton, had returned stronger than ever. They had the talent, experience, and firepower to compete with the Bulls, and they were hungry for revenge. But Jordan, even in his 14th season, was more than up to the challenge. The series was everything fans had hoped for, intense, high stakes, and filled with drama. The Jazz fought tooth and nail in every game, but the Bulls' experience, led by Jordan's brilliance, proved to be the deciding factor. Game 6 of the finals would become known as the last shot, Jordan's final moments as a Chicago Bull. With the Bulls up by 1 point in the final seconds, Jordan took the ball, dribbled to the top of the key, and hit a jump shot over Brian Russell to give the Bulls a 3-point lead. It was the perfect ending to a perfect career, sealing the Bulls' 6th title. The 1998 championship was the culmination of everything Michael Jordan had worked for. It wasn't just about winning, it was about leaving a legacy. Jordan had proven that he could win on his terms, with his teammates, and through his leadership. He had shown that his greatness wasn't just about scoring or individual accolades, it was about his ability to lift everyone around him and lead a team to greatness. As the confetti fell and Jordan held his 6th championship trophy, it was clear that the journey had come full circle. Jordan had done what he set out to do, cement his place as the greatest of all time. But as Jordan reflected on that final moment, he knew that this was the end of an era. The Chicago Bulls, as the world knew them, were no more. The dynasty was over, but the legacy remained. For Michael Jordan, the 1998 Finals wasn't just the end of a season, it was the end of an era, and the beginning of a new chapter. The world would never forget what he had accomplished, and his legacy would continue to influence the game for generations to come. The summer of 1998 brought an unexpected yet inevitable chapter in Michael Jordan's life. The Bulls had just finished their most successful season, completing a second three-peat under his leadership. Yet, despite all the glory and the countless accolades, Jordan's decision to retire again seemed like a natural consequence of everything he had already achieved. He had reached the pinnacle of basketball greatness, 6 championships, 5 MVPs, and countless records, but what more was there to prove? As the confetti fell on the 1998 Finals and Jordan stood with the championship trophy once again, the weight of it all began to settle on him. He had done it all, and now, it was time to walk away. For Jordan, basketball had always been more than just a sport. It was his sanctuary, his escape, and his proving ground. The game had shaped him, driven him, and defined him. But it was also the source of immense pressure. The constant scrutiny, the endless expectations, and the mental and physical demands of playing at the highest level year after year had taken their toll. His body, once invincible, was now worn down from the years of competing at such a grueling pace. More importantly, Jordan had spent so many years focused on the next championship, the next game, that the simple pleasures of life outside the game had taken a back seat. The pain of his father's death still lingered in his heart, and basketball, which had once been a refuge, had become a burden. His decision to retire was not just a professional one, it was personal. Jordan had given everything to the game, but now, it was time to give something back to himself. The idea of walking away from basketball, leaving behind the fame and adulation, was difficult to grasp, but Jordan was no longer willing to sacrifice his happiness for the pursuit of another title. He had always been driven by the desire to be the best, but now, the realization had hit him, there was more to life than being the greatest basketball player. The decision to retire again was not immediate. It had been a process that had begun before the 1998 Finals even started. There were rumors swirling about the future of the team, of Phil Jackson's uncertain coaching future, and of the future of the organization as a whole. The Bulls were at a crossroads. Jordan had been the centerpiece of their success for so long, but now, with the dynasty beginning to fray, it felt like the right moment to leave. Jackson had already made it clear that he would not return to coach the team if they won the championship, and the uncertainty surrounding the team's future made Jordan realize that his time in Chicago had come to an end. After the victory in June, Jordan announced his retirement again. This time, it felt final. The press conference was filled with the usual sentiments of gratitude, nostalgia, and emotion, but Jordan knew that his time in the game was done. His legacy had been secured, and now, it was time for him to move on to the next chapter of his life. There was no dramatic farewell tour, no grand send-off, just a quiet acknowledgement that he had reached the end of an era. The world was left to reflect on his greatness, but Jordan himself was already focused on what would come next. But life after basketball proved to be a different kind of challenge. Jordan had always been able to channel his emotions into basketball, but now, without the game to occupy his mind, he had to confront his own identity outside of basketball. He wasn't sure what to do with all the time he now had. He wasn't just a basketball player, he was Michael Jordan, the global icon. The transition from the court to normal life wasn't easy. The competitive drive that had propelled him for so many years still burned inside him, but without the game, it was difficult for him to find an outlet for that energy. He took a brief hiatus and spent time with his family, but the reality of his absence from basketball was starting to settle in. In 2000, Jordan surprised the world by announcing his return to the NBA, this time with the Washington Wizards. It was a decision that shocked many, as Jordan had already retired twice and seemed content with his post-basketball life. But the pull of the game was too strong for him to ignore. He returned to the Wizards with a new mission, not just to compete, but to give back to the game. Jordan knew he couldn't recapture his past glory, but he wanted to show that he could still play at a high level and inspire the next generation of players. He wanted to teach them what he had learned about leadership, about work ethic, and about how to approach greatness. Jordan's time with the Wizards wasn't about chasing another championship. It was about proving to himself and to others that he still had the ability to compete. At the age of 38, he was no longer the dominant force he had been in the 1990s, but he still managed to put up impressive numbers. He averaged over 20 points per game in his first season back, and his leadership and presence on the floor made an impact on the young players around him. His return to the NBA was a reminder of what made him great: the passion, the drive, and the mentality of a winner. While Jordan's second stint in the NBA wasn't as successful as his first, it served a different purpose. He wasn't trying to build another dynasty or claim another title. Instead, he was focused on making an impact on the league in a new way. The Wizards weren't championship contenders, but Jordan's influence on the team was undeniable. His mentorship of young players like Jerry Stackhouse, Richard Hamilton, and Edan Thomas helped shape the future of the franchise. Jordan's return was a way for him to continue his legacy in a different form, to teach the next generation of players what it meant to be great. But after 2 seasons with the Wizards, it was clear that Jordan's time in the NBA had come to an end for good. His body, though still capable of incredible performances, had begun to show signs of wear. The game had changed, and Jordan was no longer able to dominate in the same way he had in his prime. He announced his final retirement in 2003, closing the book on his playing career for good. Jordan's retirement in 2003 was a quiet one, with no grand celebrations or farewell tours. He had already accomplished everything there was to accomplish in basketball. He was a 6-time NBA champion, a 5-time MVP, a 14-time All-Star, and the owner of countless records and accolades. But more than that, he had redefined what it meant to be an athlete. He had shown the world that greatness wasn't just about talent, it was about drive, determination, and the will to succeed no matter the odds. After retiring, Jordan turned his attention to new ventures. He became part owner and president of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets, where he had a chance to shape the future of an NBA franchise. His business ventures continued to thrive, especially his partnership with Nike, which had turned his Air Jordan brand into a global phenomenon. Jordan's post-basketball life was marked by success in the corporate world, but his impact on basketball remained constant. He continued to inspire players, coaches, and fans, not just because of his accomplishments but because of the way he had changed the game forever. Jordan's legacy wasn't just about his 6 championships or his iconic moments on the court. It was about the way he approached the game, the way he pushed himself and his teammates to be the best. He was a pioneer, a player who elevated the entire sport and set a standard that players would strive for long after he was gone. Michael Jordan was no longer just a player, he had become a symbol of greatness. And even in retirement, his influence continued to be felt in every corner of the basketball world. His legacy would last forever. Michael Jordan's journey after retiring from basketball for the second time in 1999 led him into a world of reflection, new challenges, and legacy building that transcended the game itself. By the time he hung up his sneakers for the final time after the 2002-2003 NBA season, Jordan had cemented his place as the greatest basketball player ever. Yet his influence, both in the world of sports and beyond, remained a powerful force. His story was no longer just about championships and accolades, it had become a story of what it means to leave a legacy and what comes after the spotlight fades. The transition from player to businessman wasn't as smooth as many would think. Jordan was accustomed to being the center of attention, the one who had the game on his shoulders and took on the world in the final minutes. But when he stepped away from the game, it became clear that life without basketball was a challenge in its own right. Despite his immense success, Jordan had always defined himself by his ability to perform under pressure, to constantly reinvent himself to meet the demands of the game. In retirement, that pressure no longer existed in the same form. It was, instead, replaced by the task of building something new, something just as meaningful, but without the ball in his hands. The next chapter of his life began with business. Jordan's role as a global icon had transcended basketball by the time of his second retirement. His partnership with Nike had created one of the most successful endorsement deals in history. The Air Jordan brand had become a symbol of excellence, style, and cultural significance. The shoes were no longer just for basketball players, they were worn by athletes from every sport, by entertainers, and by people simply looking to make a statement. The Jordan brand wasn't just a line of products, it was a symbol of what it meant to be great, both on and off the court. But Jordan's business success went beyond just his shoe deal. In 2010, Jordan took his first steps into the world of NBA ownership, becoming part owner and head of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets. At the time, the team was struggling. The Hornets weren't contenders in the Eastern Conference, and they needed a leader who could both inspire them on the court and bring stability off it. As a minority owner and later the team's majority owner, Jordan brought the same work ethic, competitiveness, and attention to detail that had defined his playing career. His goal wasn't just to oversee a franchise, it was to change the Hornets' culture, to build a winner from the ground up. Jordan's ownership journey, much like his playing days, was filled with challenges and adversity. The first few seasons saw the Hornets struggling to reach the upper echelons of the NBA. There were personnel changes, unsuccessful drafts, and growing pains as the franchise worked to find its footing. But Jordan, who had always played with a chip on his shoulder, approached the task with the same relentless mindset that had carried him to 6 championships. He worked to build the right front office staff, hired the right coaches, and focused on creating a culture of hard work and commitment, one that mirrored his own values. While the Hornets didn't achieve immediate success, Jordan's influence could be seen in the way the team began to evolve. He emphasized defense, unselfish ball movement, and team chemistry, the same values that had guided his success with the Bulls. Over the years, the team became more competitive, with players like Kemba Walker emerging as leaders. Jordan's hands-on approach, which many in the NBA world were familiar with, paid off in incremental steps. It was a reminder that success isn't always immediate, but with the right mindset and commitment, even the greatest challenges can be overcome. Jordan's role as an owner also brought him into new areas of influence. His name was still synonymous with greatness, and his decisions carried weight, not just within his own franchise but across the entire NBA. His leadership style, marked by an unwavering commitment to excellence, a willingness to take risks, and a focus on long-term success, became a model for other NBA executives to follow. His presence in the ownership world also helped change the perception of what it meant to be an athlete-turned-businessman. Jordan was no longer just a sports icon, he had become an entrepreneur, an investor, and a symbol of success in multiple arenas. However, Jordan's impact wasn't limited to the business world. He continued to serve as a global ambassador for basketball, using his platform to promote the game he loved and inspire the next generation of athletes. His presence at NBA All-Star weekends, charity events, and in media interviews kept him relevant to the sport and reminded fans of the legacy he had built. Jordan's influence extended beyond the basketball court. He became a figure who embodied what it meant to push boundaries, to elevate the game, and to redefine success. In 2009, Jordan's legacy was further cemented when he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. The ceremony was a culmination of his career and an acknowledgement of everything he had achieved both on and off the court. It was a moment for Jordan to reflect on his impact, not just on the NBA, but on the world of sports as a whole. The speeches, the tributes, and the applause from his peers spoke to his status as the greatest player to ever play the game. For Jordan, the Hall of Fame induction was not just a validation of his past, it was a sign of how his influence would continue to echo in the world for years to come. Despite all of his success, the competition in Jordan never really faded. His work ethic, his drive to be the best, and his commitment to winning had been the foundation of his basketball career, and they remained at the core of everything he did after his retirement. Whether it was pushing his players to perform at their highest level, negotiating business deals, or making decisions that would shape the future of the NBA, Jordan's relentless pursuit of excellence remained undiminished. Yet, even as Jordan's business ventures flourished and his influence grew, there was still something missing, a sense of closure. He had achieved everything possible in basketball, but the love for the game never fully left him. The competitive fire still burned, and as time passed, Jordan began to reflect more and more on his legacy, not just as a player but as a cultural figure. He wanted to make sure that his story was told properly, that the impact he had on the game of basketball, on sports culture, and on the world would be understood for generations to come. This led to the creation of the documentary series The Last Dance, which aired in 2020. The documentary gave fans a behind-the-scenes look at Jordan's final season with the Chicago Bulls, offering a raw and intimate view of the challenges, triumphs, and sacrifices that came with being the most famous athlete in the world. It was a reminder that, even after all these years, Jordan's presence still loomed large in the basketball world. The series wasn't just about reliving past glory, it was a celebration of his journey, his relentless pursuit of greatness, and his ability to inspire both on and off the court. The 10-part series captivated millions, reminding the world of what made Michael Jordan a legend. It also underscored the deeper story of his life, a story about more than just basketball, about pushing through adversity, about leadership, and about what it takes to be the best. For Jordan, The Last Dance was a chance to reflect on his legacy, to acknowledge the importance of his family, and to give fans a glimpse into the man behind the legend. It wasn't just a walk down memory lane, it was a chance for Jordan to further solidify his place as one of the most transformative figures in sports history. As Jordan continues to shape the future of basketball through his ownership of the Charlotte Hornets, his impact on the game remains undeniable. His legacy as the greatest player of all time isn't just built on his 6 championships or his 5 MVPs. It's built on how he changed the game, how he inspired millions, and how he showed the world that greatness isn't just about talent, it's about effort, resilience, and never settling for less than the best. Michael Jordan's story is far from over, and his legacy will continue to resonate for generations to come. As the years passed since his final retirement from the NBA in 2003, Michael Jordan's life took on new dimensions. Basketball had been his everything. It had given him purpose, glory, and an identity that was celebrated worldwide. But when he walked away from the game for the last time, he was not just a retired athlete, he had become a global icon, a symbol of excellence, and a figure whose influence transcended the court. Even after his playing career ended, the world remained fascinated by Michael Jordan, by his achievements, his mentality, and the undeniable legacy he left in basketball. After his second and final retirement, Jordan continued to have a profound impact on the world of sports, business, and culture. He turned his attention to new challenges, notably becoming the majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets in 2010. While his transition from player to owner wasn't easy, Jordan embraced the new opportunity with the same intensity that had propelled him to 6 championships with the Chicago Bulls. As an owner and president of basketball operations, Jordan reshaped the franchise, guiding it through difficult seasons toward greater competitiveness. Though the Hornets didn't immediately become the league's dominant force, Jordan's leadership and business acumen showed the same resilience and determination that had made him a basketball legend. The transition from court to boardroom was not without its obstacles. Jordan, known for his unmatched competitive drive, was still learning the ropes of team ownership, but his basketball IQ, the very essence of what made him great as a player, began to manifest in his new role. He wasn't just focused on winning titles as a team owner, he was shaping the future of basketball, mentoring young players, and teaching them the values that had made him great: commitment, sacrifice, and mental toughness. Yet, even in retirement, Jordan's place in the game of basketball never wavered. His shadow loomed large over the sport. His name remained synonymous with greatness, his iconic number 23 jersey immortalized. His influence continued through his brand partnerships, especially with Nike, where the Air Jordan sneakers became more than just athletic wear, they were cultural symbols. His partnership with Nike had become a lasting legacy, one that helped redefine the way athletes marketed themselves and built their personal brands. Even in his post-playing years, Jordan's iconic image remained a massive force in the worlds of business, culture, and fashion. Despite all this, it was Jordan's ongoing connection to basketball, his continued presence, mentorship, and influence in the game that kept his legacy alive. Whether he was giving advice to the next generation of NBA stars or sharing his story with young athletes in interviews, his presence and perspective had a ripple effect far beyond the court. His story was not just about the 6 championships or the 5 MVPs, it was about the mindset he built, one that has continued to shape and inspire athletes for generations. Even in the later stages of his career, Jordan's story had a way of intertwining with the future of the NBA. In 2020, the release of The Last Dance, the documentary about the 1997-98 Chicago Bulls and their final championship run, offered fans an unparalleled look at the moments, pressures, and sacrifices that defined Jordan's career. The documentary not only offered a glimpse into the competitive intensity that Jordan brought to every game but also provided insight into the psychological and emotional aspects of his journey. It was a powerful reminder that greatness isn't just about what you accomplish, it's about the sacrifices you make, the challenges you face, and the mindset you carry with you in every moment. The docuseries was a fitting end to the story of Jordan's basketball career, but it also felt like the beginning of another chapter. Even years after his retirement, Jordan's legacy still had the power to captivate the world. Throughout The Last Dance, Jordan was reminded of the battles, the struggles, and the victories that made him the man he was. Reflecting on the impact of his journey, Jordan shared stories about his teammates, his relentless drive to win, and the emotional toll the game had taken on him. It was clear that basketball had shaped who he was, but what was even more evident was that he never stopped pushing. He never stopped seeking greatness, and he never stopped demanding excellence, not just from others, but from himself. His legacy was not only built on his 6 championships but also on his ability to elevate others, to demand more from them, and to lead by example. The documentary also gave Jordan a chance to reflect on the people who had been instrumental in his journey, particularly his father. The death of James Jordan Sr. had been a traumatic experience that reshaped Michael's approach to life and basketball. His father had always been there for him, supporting him through every success and challenge. Even years after his father's passing, Jordan carried that memory with him. The loss was still something that weighed heavily on him, but it also gave him perspective. It was a reminder of how precious time was, of how fleeting moments can be. The emotional weight of that loss shaped his work ethic, his commitment to the game, and his desire to succeed. As Jordan's influence continued to shape the game, he became more than just an athlete. He became a mentor, a leader, and a philanthropist. His charitable work became a central part of his post-basketball life. Through the Jordan brand and his foundation, he supported various causes, particularly those related to education, youth development, and equality. Jordan understood the power of his platform and used it to help create positive change in the world. He was no longer just an athlete chasing another title, he was someone who wanted to leave the world better than he found it. The competitive fire that had made Jordan the greatest basketball player of all time had not extinguished. It had simply evolved. No longer was it about championships, MVPs, or personal glory. It was about legacy, about shaping the future and inspiring others to strive for greatness. Through his business ventures, his charitable efforts, and his leadership of the Hornets, Jordan's legacy was continually being written. He had proven that greatness was not just a product of talent, it was about hard work, perseverance, and an unrelenting desire to be the best. As Jordan entered his later years, his status as a basketball icon remained unquestioned. He had transformed the game, changed how athletes approached their careers, and elevated the sport to heights that few could have imagined. But his legacy was more than just basketball, it was about inspiring people to be better, to work harder, and to push themselves to reach their full potential, no matter the odds. Michael Jordan's story was not one of just victories, it was a story of transformation, of overcoming adversity, and of building a legacy that would endure far beyond his time on the court. In the end, Michael Jordan's life and career will always be remembered for one thing, his ability to be the greatest. He proved that greatness is not about talent alone, it's about the mindset, the discipline, and the will to fight for success every single day. His story is one of triumph, but also of vulnerability, perseverance, and personal growth. It's a story that continues to inspire the world, and it will remain a part of the fabric of basketball for generations to come. As Jordan himself once said, "I can accept failure, but I can't accept not trying. That mindset, that drive, is what made Michael Jordan not just the greatest basketball player, but one of the greatest people to ever walk this earth.